Welcome to the Wunderkammer, the place where you will find all the needed objects in order to discover yourself. But be careful, this cabinet of curiosities will uncover things you never wanted to see unveiled. This room will open the abyss of darkness for you. You will see how this darkness will lead you to the light you were searching for all this time. Wunderkammer is excited to be your guide to that light. The story takes place in a town called Kurouzucho, where you can already notice that everything is spiral. Everything is so spiral that in fact random happenings or whirlwinds occur. Kirigushima is our main storyteller, who lives in that weird town. Kiri is on her way to meet up with Shuichi at the station when suddenly she sees Shuichi's father in the corner of a small street. She catches him obsessively staring at a snail shell, but she tries not to think much of it. Later, when she meets up with Shuichi, she asks him about his dad. He suddenly gets depressed and tells Kiri that his dad started to behave really strangely. He suggests running away from this place for both of them. He explains how this town drives him insane, and he noticed that because he goes to the high school in a nearby town. He says that every time he arrives back home, he's starting to feel dizzy, especially every time he gets off at the station platform. You can already see what will happen, you guys. Suddenly, a sound goes through the speaker close to where Kiri and Shuichi are sitting, and Shuichi starts to react as if he can't tolerate the sound. The ocean looks nothing like this from Midoriyamashi, where I go to school, and that black lighthouse, ugh, it's evil. The looming mountains behind us, the winding streets, it all gets on my nerves. Yes, winding. I'm getting wound up. Spirals. This town is contaminated with spirals. The next day, Shuichi's father visits Kiri's father at work. Kiri's father works as a potter, and you can already guess that you'll see weird behavior here as well. Shuichi's father mentions that he loves pottery because it's the art of the spiral, while Kiri's father looks at him and tells him that the spinning wheel can be pretty dizzying. And I really want to know, why is everybody and everything obsessed with spirals? And why are spirals the curse exactly? I mean, I have so many questions, and we'll find out soon enough, I guess. Shuichi's father goes crazy, and you can see his obsession when he tells the potter to make him one piece of pottery with a pattern of spirals, because he wants one that will make him dizzy. He gestures the same patterns as the shell he was staring at earlier, while explaining that he collects everything that has the same pattern. Mr. Goshima, I find the spiral to be very mystical. It fills me up with a deep fascination, like nothing else in nature, no other shape. I'm sure you'll understand how wonderful the spiral is. It is perfect, the most sublime art, and no one but you can create such art. The next day, Shuichi tells Kiri that his dad became so obsessed that he stopped going to work and is constantly closed in his study. But why spirals? That's what I want to figure out. Furthermore, Shuichi mentions that his dad stares in a spiral so intensely that his eyes move in a spiral direction independently of each other. They move in different directions. So now we can see that the spiral is like an addiction, like a tool to get lost into and to get completely lost from reality. His dad always stirs the miso soup until he's satisfied, or stirs the water in the bathtub before bathing. He's basically obsessed. But Kiri doesn't believe him, and Shuichi invites her to see his dad's abnormal behavior for herself. Shuichi looks like the sanest person in this town. He thinks that his town is the reason why his father acts weirdly. He shows that in this town a lot of things are spiral. The whirlpools in the stream, the whirlwinds, the dust devils. He knows that that's not a coincidence. When they arrive at Shuichi's house, they both see his father attacking Shuichi's mother because she took action and threw away his collection of spirals because he needs to go to work and provide for the family. But he says that he doesn't need those collections, that she can express the spiral through her body, while he starts to spin his eyes in opposite directions. A couple of days later, Kiri's father gives the finished bow to Kiri, telling her to deliver it to Mr. Saito, who is Shuichi's father. But he says that he doesn't need it because he can use his tongue to make spirals now. That's long and creepy. and he has a spiral shirt. Wow, what a fan. Because of this unusual sight, Kitty runs away and Mr. Saito accepts another delivery instead. I wonder what it is. After the event, he passes away and it's obvious that it has something to do with his obsession. Do you want to know how he died? Well, he made himself into a spiral. So the delivery that he accepted was basically the tub in which he put himself. While Shuichi explains this to Kitty, people notice something in the sky, and that is a spiral made from the ashes of Shuichi's father, which are forming into a spiral and swirling down towards the water. The ashes start to make out a face, which is Mr. Saito's face. Everybody is in shock when they recognize Shuichi's father. After seeing this, his wife loses it all and is sent to the hospital. Because of the trauma that she went through, she develops an extreme phobia of spirals to the point where she shaves her head because she can't handle curls, stops eating food, and cuts her own skin on her hands and toes in order to get rid of the skin texture. According to Shuichi, she went to that extreme because when they found Mr. Saito's body, he looked at her and said, "Yuki dear, come join me in the spiral." Everyone thinks that she is delusional, as always. While they are for a check from the doctor about Shuichi's mother, Shuichi notices the cochlea on the poster and freaks out because he's so terrified of the spiral and how his mother will react. What's interesting is that Shuichi's mother reacts just like Shuichi at the beginning, at the sound of the speakers. She can't stand that sound, and this is connected somehow to the cochlea, I'm sure of that. Speaking of the cochlea, the reason why Shuichi freaks out when he sees it on the anatomical illustration is because he's afraid that his mother will be reminded that she still has a spiral inside of her head, and we can already guess where all of this is going. Later on, we have this scene where Mrs. Saito is sleeping and an insect appears which wakes her up with trying to get in her ear, forms a spiral and reminds her of Mr. Saito. About this, I have an interesting proposal. So either this panel, where the head of the insect has Mr. Saito's head with his eyes looking at her, this is either her hallucination because of the intense manifested fear and dread, or it's still her husband's obsession where he is going after her cochlea next. I guess I was right. Mr. Saito wants to curl up in her cochlea and sleep there, as if he wants to find the true peace from that obsession. Because of what happened, Mrs. Saito gets obsessed about what's inside the ear and goes to check the anatomy chart while her son is trying to stop her. The doctor took the chart down before this event as if he knew that she was going to come after the ear next. The same night, Mrs. Saito goes berserk because her husband appears again and she stabs her ears and loses her hearing and balance. Not having balance made Mrs. Saito even more uneasy because it feels as if you're drifting in a spiral, and you can't stay right. After her death, her remains create a spiral in the sky once again. But this really bugs me. Why are spirals making everybody mad? So obviously, in the whole manga, the spiral is the center of events. The next case is Kiri's best friend, Azami Kurotani. She's a pretty girl who is obsessed with winning every single guy she lands her eye on, and you can see that especially in her interaction with Shuichi. She has a scar on her forehead which attracts everyone she wants. The first time Shuichi sees her, he freaks out because he sees the spiral in her forehead, which forms completely later. Azami's character is similar to Tommy's. In fact, her personality is the same as Tommy's. If you want to see a deeper analysis of Azami and Tommy, you can watch my other video titled The Psychology of Tommy, analyzing Junji Ito's Tommy. So, Azami gets obsessed with Shuichi because of her codependency and control tactics, and watch my video about Tommy in order to understand what I'm talking about, and starts coming to his house all the time. She gets obsessed to the point where she manipulates another boy who likes her to set him up to meet her in order to force Shuichi to not run away from her. She succeeds in that, except her spiral ends up forming a hole in her head, and she ends up sucking a whole person inside her body. But the spiral doesn't stop there. Azami ends up sucking herself in nothingness. The spiral literally swallows her as well. So the first part of Uzumaki is going to end here. I'm going to make multiple parts of this manga because the psychology of it fascinates me so much that I actually needed a lot of time in order to think about the story and feel the characters and I fell in love with the story, honestly. So the spiral reminds me of an entity which literally gives you what you desperately need the most and you're craving. And that's why the spiral creates this addiction. And I noticed that the spiral itself has this energy which taps into the person's unconscious and brings out the desperation and the addictive behavior towards that thing. As an example, Azami got what she wanted with this spiral. She attracted every man she saw, and that itself was what she was so desperate about. She wanted to be seen and validated. And Shuichi's father started feeling addicted because he's drawn to the positive sides of life. He started seeing the life through the eyes of the inner artist. But of course, if you witness the insanity of what that spiral causes, or should I say, pulls out from the surface of the unconscious mind, the spiral becomes your worst nightmare. When you start observing the behavior of Shuichi's mom, you can't help but ask the question if what happened with the spiral is truly real, or all of that were symptoms of schizophrenia. It's pretty common to develop schizophrenia, especially after experiencing severe trauma. The spiral has the energy of desperation, and nothing is ever enough. What I felt while I was reading the manga is that the spiral pulls out the darkest fragments of your unconscious mind, which are desperate, start from something, and are craving illusion. It's like the spiral pulls you in a state where you're addicted to the illusion that it gives you, the fulfillment of happiness, admiration, and childish emotions that we all desperately crave. The spiral functions like pink glasses. It fills your deepest emptiness, and so you become even more and more addicted to the pleasure of feeling full. I mean, everyone would feel that way. And not being in reality feels so good that you never seem to get enough of it. The spiral feels what is most empty in your unconscious, and because the characters are unaware of that, they become extremely addicted to the degree where they successfully repress their fear of death. And that's why all of them end up committing suicide. So what is very important to note is that when we experience extreme pleasure or extreme pain, we tend to completely disidentify from the fear of death. As an example, that's why people who are more depressed and suicidal tend to be less afraid of death than people who live or are grown up in relatively healthy circumstances. So we will develop these thoughts as we continue reading the manga. So please subscribe to see the second part, and please make sure to like this video and to share it if you find it interesting or useful. I can't wait to read the next chapters and to make the second part. And I can't wait to see what thoughts and what theories we're going to evolve with this manga. So did you like the visit in the Wunderkammer? If you did, please like, subscribe, and share this content if you see it as helpful. Did you also notice the artworks in this video? They're not put accidentally. If you want to understand my philosophical reasons of why I put them in the video, you can become a crow on Patreon. In that tier, I'm posting the paintings and the contacts they have in the video. You can also see them like Easter eggs. But only crows can see through the messages, because they are messengers themselves. You can also become a raven. In that tier, you can ask me for answers and guidance about anything you're curious about, and you're going to receive a high quality answer. I also have playlists on Spotify under my name, Katerina Lunas, if you need something to trigger and enhance your emotional experience. Can you hear the footsteps? They're the footsteps of illusion. It's coming. But what are you going to do about it? Accept it or do something about it?